Do you think of other examples or stories of where you or other people you might have known have gotten themselves just a little bit more risk than they expected?
Well, I think the best example that I can think of is John Krakauer's story
Hmm.
Into the Wild. And I highly recommend that for anyone who's interested in learning these skills and going out and thinks about testing themselves. Read that book. It was about somebody who had some skills and was overconfident, wanted to test himself, and got himself into too much trouble. And one of the things that when I'm teaching people or showing people some of these skills, I really encourage everybody to carry something as a backup. It's not a it's no slight to you as a human being to carry some extra food, some emergency supplies. You can stash it well away from camp. You don't have to use it, but at least you've got it. And in the case of the individual in this book, if he had had that, he'd be alive today.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, that reminds me of another little misadventure I had. We were taking some young people out. This would have been, wow, probably I was about 22. So I think first, second year of professionally, taking people out into the bush. And about 16 people between the age of 12 and 17. Some of these young people were coming in from what's called the Children's Aid Society. They'd been in juvenile, so there were some strong personalities in the group for sure.
That's a polite way of putting it.
A lot of respect for
Yeah.
people who've been through some challenging times. That's
Mm-hmm.
why we're doing it.
Yeah.
Kind of went through that myself, I guess. And anyway, we're going along in this lake. It was a 2-week trip, A to B in canoes, portaging over the hills between the lakes and stuff. And this deluge of rain happens. I mean, we were bailing our canoes. I mean, there's 2 people in a canoe, a couple of packs, but it was so fast. The water was coming down so fast. We actually had to bail the canoes. We saw an island, headed for the island as fast as we could. Turned over the canoes to keep them from, soaking the packs anymore. But we were pretty well organized. Everybody had the most important stuff in garbage bags in their packs. So some people had dry clothes. Some of the people were getting tents together. Most of us just stripped down to our shorts because wearing wet clothes in a rainstorm is worse than being pretty much buck naked. But young people, we kept our shorts on and trying to start a fire. But everything was soaking wet. And I had my Strike Anywhere matches with the wind-proof, waterproof ones. Right, this is one of those really learning moments. So what I did is I took a hollowed out piece of birch, pushed the punky wood out of it, found dry stuff, lint in our pockets, everything we could. We built a little tinder bundle inside the birch tube so that if we get a match up inside of it, we could get the fire going and it would get the birch bark going, and then we could stuff some, tinder and,
Mm-hmm.
kindling and stuff in there. And it's a pretty smart way to make a fire in the
Right.
rain, makes sense.
Yeah.
So here I got my box of Strike Anywhere waterproof, windproof matches, but it was in my pocket and it was wet. So I take my wonderful, sort of semi-smart thing, and I go to strike the match on the box, but the box is wet, so the whole striking surface just comes off
Right.
like,
Like
wet
the
toilet paper.
yeah,
So
like the
I'm like,
paper it is.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, so that's not so great. Eventually, you found a little bit of a rock and tried that, but everything was so wet, it was just like hopeless. And of course, there's one of the young women, one of the stronger personalities of the group. I'll never forget this person. For another reason entirely, which maybe I'll bring up sometime. She brought her own cigarettes, and we had everyone put their cigarettes in the first aid kit with all the other stuff so that we wouldn't have any accidents. It was kind of in that First Nations non-interference ethics with the group, so we weren't trying to just tell people no, 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 because that's just going to cause more forest fires, right? So she had kept her lighter with her, and so she brought it out and she lit the fire. And within about 5 minutes, we had a really, really nice fire going. But it was just because somebody decided to keep that extra thing, like you said, tucked away just in case. Well, for
Mm-hmm.
other reasons, perhaps. But without that, we would have been in a little bit of trouble because those Strike Anywhere matches are great as long as you keep the box dry.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of another time, another fire situation. Thought I would go out for a 2-week survival trip, and went off by myself and canoed into this beautiful area. It was in the doesn't have a nice name though. It's called the Dead Stream Swamp. The Dead Stream Swamp. It's in Michigan. It's a beautiful wilderness area, and it's mostly a grass swamp.
Oh wow.
But I canoed in August, beautiful bright blue sky, and then I'd only gone for about an hour, and then all the clouds came in, and it just pounded down rain, and it rained for 4 days straight.
Hmm.
And I built a shelter, and I was damp, but I wasn't soaking wet, and I waited until the rain let off to just a drizzle, but of course the woods were soaked, and tried to find something to start a fire with. And I think I was 18 at the time, and I thought I knew a lot, and I'd made many fires at home with a bow drill, and I thought, oh, how hard could it be? I'll just find some dry wood out there. Well, I couldn't find anything that was dry. And after 4 days of trying and lots of smoke, and fasting for 4 days, because I couldn't afford to go out and get soaking wet foraging and not have a fire to dry off.
Right. That's super important.
And so I stayed damp and hungry, and after 4 days, I went home.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
And I could have had a totally different experience if I had brought matches or a lighter or something, and then I would have stayed longer. And my skills are way better than they were back then, but it's just that sense of confidence that is a few steps beyond where the skills actually were.
Yeah. It actually reminds me of something. My grandfather Paul, who was an astoundingly gifted bushman, he spent 32 years in the early 20th century basically as a hunter and trapper, living with Athabascan people, the Nodene people, basically living as one of them, and knew lots of stuff. But he says if you want to learn to start a fire the old way, here's the challenge, is to go out into the bush, make yourself either a hand drill, bow drill set, make a fire, and then put it in the fire and burn it. But he says, while you're learning to do that, it would be really nice to sit there by a warm fire as you learn how to make and build one. So, take a lighter with you until you're good enough to do that, because this is the thing, I guess, that we're really talking about is if you over-assume that you've got it all figured out, that nature's really just right there to help you out in every possible way. What's that thing about assume? It makes an ass out of you and me, I think, if you take the words apart. So, yeah, and it's not going to help you at all. And